Blog Talk Radio.
America Meditating Blog Talk Radio Show. We collect wisdom, hear stories, and inspire each other. I'm Sister Jenna. Tune in live from Monday through Friday at 8 a.m.
The entire world watched.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And humanity saw that the sky was not the limit. Achievement. Pass it on from the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.
Do you like to meditate? Have you tried to meditate? Have you struggled with meditation? Why don't you visit one of the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Center? Visit brahmakumaris.org.
My life is a good life. Ashe, Ashe, my life is good. Ashe, Ashe, my life is a good life. Ashe, Ashe, my life is good. Amen, amen, my heart is a good heart. Amen, amen, my heart is good. Amen, amen, my heart
Ashe, Ashe from Ricky Beckwith from the Agape Movement in Southern California. Welcome to America Meditating Radio Show. I'm your host, Sister Jenna. We're broadcasting from the beautiful Windermere in Richmond, Virginia, where the lawn is sparkling and perfectly laid out, and the whole space an oasis for definitely a beautiful retreat on spirituality and self-enlightenment. We're looking forward to our special guest, Kristin Neff, who will be joining us and sharing with us about mindful compassion and understanding what the power of compassion really is, and a lot more as well. And if you've ever missed any of our shows and wish to join them back again, please download the Pause for Peace app, and that app will give you updates on all the other activities that are taking place. For example, at the Meditation Museum will be meditation courses and different classes. And in the meanwhile, before I get Kristen on the line, why don't we take a few moments and really go into a beautiful meditation on focusing our thoughts and getting into the zone. Breathe in, relax.
Focusing my thoughts. Taking just a minute. Sitting quietly, I become aware of my surroundings. I focus on an object in front of me, allowing it to fill my awareness. Letting go of any distractions, I hold only the object in my awareness. Even if I'm distracted, I gently return my focus to the object. I identify one quality of that object. I focus on this. I hold this one thought.
Flying Free CD from Lucinda Drayton. I am. Are you? Are you really who you're supposed to be, or are you still trying to figure it out? If you're like 7 billion of us, I think you should be in the category of still figuring yourself out, because for the life of you, you don't know why you still get a little bit anxious or upset or find it hard to forgive or irritated when somebody gets in your way on the road, and these little things that makes you kind of walk away from your compassion and your peace and your purity, and you question yourself. But that's okay, because life is about passing on the knowledge that whatever we're learning and realizing from ourselves, we share that with another and we pass it on. Kristin Neff, Ph.D., is an associate professor of human development and culture at the University of Texas at Austin. During her last year of graduate school in 1997, she became interested in Buddhism and has been practicing meditation in the Insight meditation tradition ever since. While doing her post-doctoral work, she conducted research on self-compassion, a central construct in Buddhist psychology, and one that had not yet been examined empirically. In addition to her pioneering research into self-compassion, Kristen has developed an 8-week program to teach self-compassion skills. The program, co-created with her colleague Chris Germer at Harvard University, is called Mindful Self-Compassion. She is the author of a book titled Self-Compassion and has produced 6-CD audio set on self-compassion, step by step. Kristen and her family were also featured in the best-selling book, an award-winning documentary called The Houseboy. Today on the America Meditating Radio Show, we welcome you. Hi.
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. So, Kristen, what has been inspiring you to be interested in studying Buddhism and meditation? Right now, there's a smorgasbord of meditation, and I know it's something that has to resonate with us, and even if something resonates with us, we might find ourselves 5 or 10 years down the line resonating with something else as well because we've changed. What is it that you've been holding on to with Buddhism, and what are the benefits of the practice of meditation in Buddhism?
Right. Well, I wouldn't say that I study Buddhism. I study self-compassion, and my interest in self-compassion came from my Buddhist practice, but it's really a much more general, much more secular notion that's relevant to people of all faiths, whether or not they meditate. So it's really the stance, opening your heart to yourself, that is where I first learned about it was in Buddhism. But to me, that idea of self-compassion is timeless, is cultureless, is genderless, is an essential aspect of just being human.
Why did you decide to focus your research on the area of self-compassion, and what exactly do we mean when we talk about self-compassion?
Right. Well, I decided to do research on it, really motivated primarily by my own personal discoveries with self-compassion through practicing Buddhist meditation and having that be a value that was really upheld. I saw how quickly self-compassion changed my life, how much it helped me deal with some emotional stresses I was going through, and really helped me change my relationship with myself to be kinder and more caring and more supportive, and saw the immediate benefit. And so I actually did some research earlier on self-esteem and started becoming aware of all the downsides, potential downsides of self-esteem, like narcissism or having to feel special and above average. So I just thought this would be a great alternative that hadn't really been looked at empirically in psychology, even though it had been discussed in spiritual traditions. So kind of my first step when deciding I wanted to research self-compassion was to define it. It could be a very vague term, right? What do I mean by self-compassion? And people get confused, too, so it's very good to be clear what we mean by that. So the way I've defined it, self-compassion has 3 main components. The first is perhaps the most self-evident. It just means being kind, caring, supportive to yourself. Really put simply, treating yourself with the same gentleness and sympathy that you treat a good friend. But most of us do not treat ourselves like we treat our good friends. We treat ourselves much, much worse, much more harshly, much more judgmentally. So it's being kind to ourselves. Really important is remembering that imperfection and suffering, whether it's suffering because we've made a mistake or just because something in our life is difficult, that this is part of the human experience. This is a shared experience. Oftentimes when, we make a mistake or we fail, we feel like something has gone wrong. This shouldn't be happening, as if baseline should be perfection, and something is abnormal when I failed or got rejected or made a mistake. And that feeling of abnormality actually makes us feel separate and cut off from the rest of the world, from our fellow humans. But with self-compassion, we remember that suffering is the shared human experience. Imperfection is normal. And therefore, when we notice imperfections in our life or ourselves, we can actually feel connected to others, not isolated. Right? And then the third component is mindfulness, which basically just means being aware when we're suffering. We can't open our heart to ourselves if we don't even notice we're in pain. And yet for many of us, one of the most constant sources of pain is our own self-criticism. But that voice can sound so familiar, it can become so habitual, we don't even stop to recognize what we're doing to ourselves. So we need mindfulness to tune in to the pain we're feeling. Then we need to respond with an open heart, remembering that this is a human condition, we aren't alone. And that's really how I define self-compassion.
Well, there's so many people in the world today struggling with the small stuff in their lives, 99 bricks in the walls were laid perfectly, but the one brick that wasn't is where they define their whole life story.
That's right,
and
yeah.
so there's a lot of this sort of indulgence of sorrow, indulgence of what you can't change, indulgence of pain, sense of, just pity on the self.
Yes.
Where does that behavior, where does that emotional behavior come from?
Yeah. Well, and also first, it's really important to distinguish self-compassion from self-pity. Because self-pity is self-focused, woe is me, poor me, whereas self-compassion is the human condition is difficult, which also means you tend to put your own problems in perspective because you're seeing it through this bigger lens. Also, the mindfulness aspect of self-compassion means you see things clearly as they are in a balanced manner. You aren't wallowing or getting lost in an exaggerated storyline of how bad things are, right? And so I think the tendency to fall into self-pity is natural. It's natural for us to be self-focused. It's natural for us to be focused on the negative because these are really good survival mechanisms, right? Our ancestors who were self-focused, worried all the time of potential dangers, passed on their genes more readily to their, future generations. So our brain is really designed for survival, but not for happiness. So with self-compassion, what we're really doing is we're going against some of these natural tendencies to look for problems, to focus on ourselves, to really constantly be in fight or flight mode, and instead try to focus on more of a heart-centered level on cultivating happiness as opposed to just pure survival. Because at the end of the day, there aren't as many saber-toothed tigers chasing us as there used to be. So our brains are overwired for threat.
Right.
But we can reverse that, yeah.
Yeah, I always find myself in this position where I'm observing not only my own life, and I'm observing why do you still need to hold on to that feeling or emotion, or the emotion from the action or the scene or the experience has come to give you a chance to hold to what is true or to let go because it's confirmed to you this is no longer true for you. And I think we're learning, we are learning, such as books like that you have out now, Self-Compassion. Folks are learning to think a little bit higher about themselves and to move forward. And in your book, Self-Compassion, you write that the relentless search for high self-esteem has become a virtual religion, and a tyrannical one at that. Could you explain a little bit more for our listeners to interpret that?
Yeah, exactly. So I think especially in American culture, and this is kind of spurred on by capitalism as well, I think to a certain extent, the idea is that we do have to be special and above average. I mean, being called average is an insult. And so therefore, in order to feel good about ourselves, we have to feel slightly better than others, which, first problem with that is it's logically impossible for us all to be above average at the same time. But it really sets up this constant social comparison. Is she prettier than I am? Is he more successful than I am? Is that person smarter than me? And of course the answer is there's always someone who's doing it better. So it's like self-esteem is this game. We're trying to feel like we have the competitive edge, but we can't always have the competitive edge. And then when we feel like we are average or God forbid, inferior, we become devastated, right? It's also contingent on success in our culture. For women, for instance, the number one determinant of self-esteem is perceived appearance. So if you're successful, if you're young and you get to the gym and you get social approval, you feel good about yourself. But what happens when you start to age? What happens if, again, you're a supermodel and that younger, prettier supermodel with the bigger bust walks into the room? Again, we feel bad about ourselves. So our sources of self-esteem tend to be very unstable, and they tend to be contingent on our latest success or failure. So it leads to problems like bullying, for instance. There's research showing that bullying in the school starts in middle adolescence, largely as kids try to find some way to feel good about themselves. So they pick on that kind of slightly weird kid who's smaller than them and weaker than them, and that's a way to get peer approval. So, the need to judge ourselves positively comes at a lot of cost, whereas self-compassion doesn't involve judging ourselves positively. It just requires relating to ourselves kindly, especially when we've just failed. So it's a much more stable source of feeling good about ourselves. And all we have to do to have self-compassion is to be a flawed human being like everyone else. So it's a pretty easy bar to jump over.
That's very true. That's very true. Research has shown that narcissism and self-esteem levels have been rising steadily, which is very important. Yet it is estimated that 25 to 30 million Americans suffer from depression. That doesn't seem like it's making sense to me. What's your decoding of?
Yeah, it's very, very strange because narcissism levels are at the highest levels ever recorded. It might be warming to know that they've leveled off the past 5 years, so it's not getting worse. But nonetheless, they're still very high. And yet, people are very self-critical, and they're very depressed often as a result. So it's almost as if we have a hard time seeing ourselves clearly. We vacillate between feeling we're, again, special and above average, needing to feel we're superior, and yet not really buying it, right? And so it's just this very unstable. Am I great? Am I terrible? Where am I? We're constantly obsessed, really, with evaluating ourselves, especially in comparison to other people. So it's we're definitely not that emotionally healthy when it comes to relating to ourselves. And I think that, again, that's because it's so focused on judgment and not focused on basics like kindness, care, compassion. And that's really what self-compassion does, is come back to those basics of open-heartedness. But a lot of people value open-heartedness, kindness, care towards others, but they cut themselves out of the circle of compassion, which ends up causing all sorts of problems. So self-compassion, we just say, I'm a human being too. I'm worthy of kindness too. I'm going to include myself as well as including others. And what happens, ironically, is it's not self-focused at all. That when you meet some of your emotional needs yourself and you have more emotional resources available because of your own self-compassion, you then have more to give to others. And people who are more self-compassionate do have better relationships with others. So it's really a win-win situation.
Beautiful. There's so many people in the world today that are so overly self-critical, and it debilitates them, and they have so much self-judgment on themselves. So I'm sure it tends to leave them feeling anxious, incompetent, depressed. But why is it? Here we are in a culture where it seems like the sky has no limit, and then you've got a bunch of people who are still quietly walking around with a real deep sense of pain or judgment on themselves. How do we go about turning this around to help individuals reach their full potential?
Yeah. Well, again, I think it really is important to remember that our brains were designed by evolution for a different time. Our brains are designed to respond to any threat with attack, with fight or flight, raising our cortisol levels, getting stressed. So, again, we can run from that saber-toothed tiger. But the system was designed for physical threats. Nowadays, almost all the threats, not all, but most of them, are to our self-concept. So if I fail, my self-concept feels under attack, which means I feel under attack, which means my threat defense system kicks into gear and I release cortisol and I get stressed. And, it's really bad because I am both the attacker and the attack. I'm attacking the problem, which is my own flawed self. And, we shouldn't judge ourselves for this. This is really just the way our brains are designed to act. Luckily, however, with practices like insight and mindfulness and meditation, we can actually retrain our brain. We can train ourselves not to immediately fall into those habitual patterns of reactivity and see things more clearly and choose new ways to respond, hopefully, responding with kindness. So the other good news is evolutionarily, mammals are given this attachment and caregiving system. This is a system that keeps the young mammalian infants close to the mother, safe, snuggled up and warm, so that it doesn't wander into the wild and get eaten by crocodiles. And although our first response is to respond with the threat defense system, we can prime that sense of safety, care, soothing with things like warm touch, gentle vocalizations, and we can do this for ourselves, by the way. Then we start feeling safe, and then we can start accessing these feelings of care and concern. So that's also in our system. So all we have to do is get in the habit of responding more from our mammalian brain than our reptilian brain. And it is actually quite possible.
Very, very interesting. Well, we're working on ourselves, no doubt, and work like what you're doing is helping us to be more, let's say, balanced or grounded, and we really thank you for that. Before I let you go, I would love for you to share what your favorite life quote is at current, and if there's a website that our listeners can find some more information on what you're doing, we would love for them to know how to get a hold of you. And please come back on the show again. We could talk a little bit more about this in detail. Thank you.
That'd be wonderful. Favorite life quote. I have so many, but one I quite like by it's attributed to Helen Keller. I'm not absolutely sure it's from her, but talking about this negativity bias and the problems with that, she says, when one door of happiness closes, another one opens. But often we spend so long looking at the closed door, we don't even see the one that has been opened for us. So I always remember that because I can be a bit of a negative thinker, and it reminds me, what am I missing by just focusing on what's wrong and not kind of pulling my head up and seeing the bigger picture? And if anyone's interested, they can just Google self-compassion. It'll go to my website, selfcompassion.org, and I have lots of free things available. You can download meditations, there are exercises, lots of research on self-compassion. You can take a test to measure your own self-compassion levels. I really designed it to be a free resource for people to learn more about it. So, selfcompassion.org. Yeah.
Beautiful. Kristen, thank you so very much for your kindness and love and the sharing that you offered today. And we're going to wish you all the continued success. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. So self-compassion and understanding and caring for ourselves, hey, they go hand in hand. It's not somebody else's job to make me feel better. It's my job to make myself feel better. And this is my promise to myself. You've been listening to America Meditating Radio Show. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Remember, no one can take away your happiness unless you give them permission. And we are here to love each other the same. If you want to tune into any of the shows, again, download the Pause for Peace app. Go to Sister Jenna at Huffington Post. Follow me on there and follow all the wonderful stories that are taking place on a regular basis. And feel free to send us an email about a show that you'd be interested in, or something that you really liked, or maybe even something that you didn't like. Take good care, everyone. All the very best. Bye-bye.
For each man and woman to live life in peace, to live without fear in a world that's secure. Some say it's a fool's dream, but I'm not so sure. I see all your faces on my TV, driven and hungry with eyes full of tears, mourning your children, father and friends, caught in a war that just never ends. How long will it be till your life is mine, and all I believe in has turned into lies? With all that I am and all that I have, I send you this token of love from my Oh, I've seen a place much more than a dream, a place of such beauty it hurts just to see, a place of no pain, no crying,